Alright guys, welcome back to another one. So today we've got a bit of an update on Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. Yet another scoop towards the game that still hasn't been officially revealed, though of course as we know, Naoki Hamguchi and the team have been incredibly vocal about the development progress of the game, even since before the release of Rebirth back in 2024. It seems to be that every 2 to 3 months, Hamguchi will step forward to give us a small little progress update on how the development of the game is going. And with 7 Remake recently releasing on both Switch 2 and Xbox, Hamguchi has been doing a round of interviews in which he actually mentions a few things to do with Part 3. The first thing here is that the title name for Part 3 has been decided. It was mentioned by Hamguchi in December that himself and Tetsuya Nomura were going through the process of selecting which title name is going to fit best for the game, and that will be decided before 2025 ends. And as he mentions here, it was up to Tetsuya Nomura to make the final call as to what it will be, and right now, it is locked in. Of course, there's been a ton of speculation as to what the title of Part 3 will be, whether it's Return, Requiem, Retribution, Reunion, although the Crisis Core remaster used that, so probably not. However, this is a massive update because it means that Square Enix can now shift gears, moving towards the official reveal of the game itself. In case you don't know, the development of Part 3 is actually further along than you might think. Hamguchi did mention back in September that the core gameplay experience is almost complete. While full-scale development of Part 3 didn't begin until around the beginning of 2024, we know through Tetsuya Nomura that some development and early beginnings on Part 3 actually began as far back as 2022, before Rebirth had even released, with the overall story script being completed by the end of 2024. But recently, Hamguchi provided yet another progress update. In terms of the third installment, I believe we are coming along very smoothly. We have set a schedule for ourselves, and I believe we are tracking on time for the milestones we have set. So I'm really thankful for the development team and have so much respect for them working on this project. I believe at this point, the game is playable technically, but we are still trying to polish it so it is at a quality where we can deliver it to our players. It's been mentioned in the past that the intended release year of Part 3 is 2027 to align with the 30th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII. Now, this isn't officially concreted, it is very much tentative, but just judging by how much progress has actually been made on this game to a point where the entire game is playable and that the team are now moving towards a polishing phase, it's seeming more and more likely with every single development update that Hamguchi provides here that 2027 is in fact going to be the release year for this game. Of course, for Kingdom Hearts fans, this comes as a slight concern. It's definitely a conflicting situation for someone like myself, as I genuinely believe that 7 Remake and 7 Rebirth are some of the absolute best video games that Square Enix has developed. So yeah, I want Part 3 as soon as possible. But at the same time, we've been waiting an incredibly long time for Kingdom Hearts 4, a game that was revealed back in 2022. I don't think that Square Enix would want to release two heavy hitters like Kingdom Hearts 4 and 7 Remake Part 3 in the same year, unless they truly do plan on releasing one at the very beginning of the year and the other at the very end of the year. But I strongly believe that if Part 3 is going to be a 2027 title, then that probably means Kingdom Hearts 4 will be a 2028 title. Like I said at the beginning of last month, this year is certainly going to be indicative towards what game is going to be releasing first. I don't have a single doubt in my mind that 2026 is going to provide the full reveal of Part 3 with its title and likely along with some substantial footage as well, just judging by the current development progress. But I'd also like to think that it will also provide an update on Kingdom Hearts 4, as it's been a lot longer. Hamguchi also confirms that Part 3 will continue to use Unreal Engine 4 rather than upgrading to UE5. The team had been considering whether or not to make the switch, but ultimately decided to just continue to use UE4. This is honestly good news because this means that there is a higher chance of better performance if the game just simply remains on UE4, and it also means that there won't be any interruptions towards the development process switching between the two versions. Looking at something like Kingdom Hearts 4, which should be Square Enix's very first Unreal Engine 5 title, I'd say that if Kingdom Hearts had remained on UE4, there's probably a good chance that we would have seen more of the game by this point. Now, switching a game from UE4 to UE5 isn't technically a massive engine switch. It definitely does come with some new things to learn, but it's not a case of, say, Square Enix switching from their own in-house engine, like the Luminos engine, to something like UE4 with what happened with Kingdom Hearts 3, because UE4 and UE5 still use the same architecture to a certain degree, but switching over to UE5 certainly adds additional time into the development process. So this is probably why the team decided to continue to use UE4 for Part 3 to ensure that there are no interruptions. Sure, it does mean that Part 3 won't have those next-gen UE5 features like Lumen or Nanite, but UE4 still holds up incredibly well to this day. In fact, a lot of people actually prefer devs to continue to develop on UE4 versus UE5 due to all the performance issues that come along with the most recent version of the engine. UE 4.27 is the most up-to-date version of UE4 released back in 2021, still pumps out some incredibly impressive games visually. I'd also say too that the quick development process of Part 3 is a result of the team remaining on UE4, meaning that a lot of the stuff that they had already previously developed for both Remake and Rebirth can simply and very easily be reused for Part 3. The reason why these games are coming out a hell of a lot quicker than something like Kingdom Hearts is due to that heavy reuse of assets and code, versus something like Kingdom Hearts that requires entirely unique new assets to be created from scratch due to the unique Disney worlds featured in that game, along with obviously the switch over to UE5. Hamguchi also reiterated that the popular Queen's Blood is also going to be making its return for Part 3, but it is going to be further enhanced, saying here, Queen's Blood is a very popular and beloved minigame, and I believe a lot of people are still wanting something like that. I want to expand on Queen's Blood so that we are enhancing it and giving you a more powered up version of it when you see that third installment. Queen's Blood was easily one of the better aspects of Rebirth. Rebirth was rife with minigames, and actually to a point where this was a negative for some people, so much so that Hamaguchi took notice that there were quite a few complaints towards the sheer amount of minigames in Rebirth. He mentioned back in 2024 with Daily Star that one thing they might look at doing for Part 3 is actually cutting down on the number of minigames. Now, personally, I don't think it's so much the amount of minigames in Rebirth that were the problem, but more so the amount of required minigames. I honestly think that the game should actually have the same, if not more, minigames in Part 3, as I really enjoyed pretty much all of them in Rebirth. So judging by what Hamaguchi's saying here, it could really be a case of expecting less minigames in Part 3, though I'm sure that the team would want to focus on quality over quantity. And a result of this might very well be the enhanced version of Queen's Blood that we're going to get in this game. Personally, I'm looking forward to this because, again, I loved this minigame so much. I'm not really even a card game enjoyer, and I ate this up. It was a game within a game that you could spend hours upon hours playing within Rebirth itself. Like, this thing was so good that I really do genuinely think that Square Enix should make Queen's Blood into its own little Final Fantasy spin-off with online capabilities. And speaking of minigames, Hamaguchi did touch upon the snowboarding minigame that takes place in the northern continent at Icicle Inn. This is obviously one of the most famous minigames from the OG Final Fantasy VII, and yes, it will be returning in Part 3. He mentions here that he doesn't want it to just be a simple snowboarding minigame. They want to make it something that's incorporated into the story to have that sort of connection with the theming of it, which I thought is kind of interesting. It seems like they're going to put a little bit more thought into it this time around. I think what people can expect from this minigame in Part 3, though, at the very least, is better feeling controls. Although people do have fond memories of Final Fantasy VII's snowboarding, a common complaint here is just how awful it is to control. The final slice here is talking about Rebirth running on Switch 2, so it's already been confirmed that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will also be making its way to Switch 2 and Xbox at some point. Hamguchi and Kitase have been incredibly vocal about how they want 7's trilogy to be available across all gaming platforms. From the GameSpot interview, Hamguchi said, "While we have gotten Rebirth to function on the Switch 2, we still need to make sure that the frame rates are stable. Our engineers are trying to fine-tune that and make sure we're optimizing it properly." Now, if we're looking at the recently released 7 Remake on Switch 2, the performance of that on the system is actually pretty impressive, offering a sharper image quality to that of the PlayStation 4 version. It runs 1080p docked at 30 frames per second and 720p undocked at 30 frames per second. While it's certainly still not as impressive as something that the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro, Xbox, or PC can achieve, it's still incredibly impressive given that this is a handheld device. The image quality apparently on Switch 2 is very impressive. But since it's been confirmed that Rebirth will eventually come to this system, there has been a lot of concern as to how Rebirth will actually perform on it, given that it's a little bit more intensive than Remake due to the nature of that game being more open world compared to Remake's more linear approach. Still though, 7 Remake's performance on the system is incredibly impressive, so with enough fine-tuning and DLSS usage, Square Enix should be able to arrive at almost the same results with Rebirth and the eventual Part 3, as yes, that will also be coming to both Xbox and Switch 2 eventually. I still think that Part 3 will be a PlayStation-timed exclusive due to an agreement between Square Enix and Sony, but given Square Enix's new modern stance on now aiming to release all games multi-platform, Part 3 should be one of the very final timed exclusives released from the company. At least looking at something like Kingdom Hearts 4, I'm sure that will end up releasing on all platforms simultaneously day one. Maybe aside from Switch if they do plan to bring it to Switch 2, as I'm sure that game will need some extra optimizations and fine-tuning to function properly. So that's everything you need to know about Part 3 for the time being. I really don't think it'll be too much longer before we see this game in an official capacity, whether it's looking at Summer Games Fest coming up in June or Square Enix's very own thing maybe beforehand or a little bit afterwards. It's pretty much sounding like the game is basically in a situation where it's ready to be publicly seen. One thing I keep mentioning is just how appreciative I am towards how vocal Hamguchi is and how transparent he is towards the development progress of Part 3. It really is the complete polar opposite compared to Kingdom Hearts 4, whereas that is just complete radio silence, and we've gone years and years and years without any real substantial updates, with only small crumbs in between. This man has been filling people in like every 2 to 3 months, just reassuring people, hey, development's going real smooth. Here's a little slice of cheese that you can take away and be happy with while you wait for the next update. It's important to know though that like Kingdom Hearts is a bit of a different situation, given that, you know, Disney also have to sign off on everything that goes on with Kingdom Hearts and also what's said publicly about that project. But at the same time too, if Disney truly is a roadblock towards any type of communication being made towards updates or progress statuses being publicly made about Kingdom Hearts 4, then they should understand that it's sort of important to keep your customers in the loop as to what's kind of going on. However, with each update we get on Part 3, it is seeming more and more likely that 2027 is in fact the release year for the game. Oh man, it's truly gonna be interesting if this actually turns out to be true. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's video. Be sure to slippity slap that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. A big shout out to my wonderful patrons and YouTube members. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll talk again real soon.